Hello, how are you?
Hi, we're back. It's
We-
good to see you again.
it's lovely to see you. Our theme of episode 2 is energetic discernment, choosing what beliefs to carry forward. And my question for you, Deborah, is when the world is loud, how do you hear what's truly yours?
You go like this. La 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 la. I can't hear you. I've been doing that a lot. You know, it really comes down to knowing what you want, not in the material world, but how do I want to feel? What is the, even though you feel you're so far from this, or you're having a really difficult experience, or things are just not working, it's not so much what do I truly want, it's how do I want to feel. And sometimes it comes down to in a very specific moment. I was in a rather heated argument with someone I was very close to a few days ago, and I finally just said, stop. I just need a moment. I took a couple steps away and just put my hand on my heart and just said, how do I want to feel? And I don't want to feel angry and upset and frustrated, particularly with this person. And how can I want to come back? And I just went back to this. I turned around and I said, this conversation isn't going well. We don't need to decide this now. And this is not how I want to feel. And I don't want you feeling upset. So let's just take a break and just walk away from that. We can't do that everything in the world. You can certainly watch less news. I have an agreement with my angels, my guides. If I'm not a stick my head in the sand person. My previous career was a video electronic media and journalism. There is that part of me that wants to stay informed and wants to know what's going on. But you can spiral into this whole doom scrolling thing, and you know, you know, seeing people that you're close to post something and you're shocked, and it can really pull you in. So you have to, garbage in, garbage out. So what are you taking in? So I have this agreement with my guides and my angels. If there is something I need to know on a personal level or on a global level, make sure I find out. And other than that, I don't go to see what's going on in the news. I check the weather report, what's the temperature for the day, check in, pull my card, my angel cards of the day, and go from there. And by curating how I'm experiencing the world and entering the world, then that allows me to deal with this overload, which I think, John, you would agree that 2025, I mean, since what, 2020, maybe even before things were happening, right? Things just seem to sort of build, and every time, okay, the pandemic's finally over. We don't have to worry about masks. We can stop arguing about vaccinations. Now we have a different conversation about vaccinations going on. Every time we think, oh, okay, boom, this happens, boom, this happens. The thing is, if you go back through history, and my most recent career that I retired from, I worked with special ed kids. So I had the opportunity to go through and learn about history, world history, U.S. history, global, all of these things. The last 2 years I was in the high school, so I took many classes over and over again. And one of the things you realize when you look at human history is there have been certain periods in history where there have been quantum leaps forward, big shifts in societal changes and quantum leaps forward in terms of how we experience our humanity, being human together. You talk about the impact. One that they talk about all the time is the impact of the printing press. Now we have digital technology. The impact of cell phones is going to be another one. Those are just technical things, but also there have been big global and social changes, right? There have been certain times in history. And I remember one time when one of my students was writing a report about the French Revolution, and I thought, man, that was messy, and it was, which was inspired by the American Revolution, right? That was messy and got violent and nasty and out of control very quick, and it was scary. And I remember saying to my student, I'm really glad, like, I was not alive during the French Revolution. I may have had a past life there. I don't know. I don't have any recalls from it. But I said, it just sounds really terrible. And I can't imagine what it would be like to have to live through a time in history where there are so many pivotal changes that everything feels like chaos. Fast forward to now. Here we are.
I thought my tower card moment was going to be over in 2020, but I feel like
Yeah, right?
once I recovered from that, it just kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And I'm someone who does watch the news, and I read the news, and I'm a political activist, as you may know, so I'm constantly like surrounded by this data and this negativity and this toxicity. So it's very important that I'm able to separate myself from all of that chaos, even if I'm surrounded by it.
But at the same time, we are all connected, right? Remember our experience in Japan together last year with the Reiki master. We are, connected by love. We are one, right? And so while there is all, we can do that to a certain point, but we're also really part of this, believe it or not, still keep asking to see the fine print on my contract. We signed up to be here. We signed up to be part of it. And just as an aside, I just want you to know how much I admire and respect you for stepping up in your community to take on the challenge of transforming the atmosphere of the local politics and making the changes that you're making. It's amazing. And it is an example of how you can be spiritual and participate in politics at the same time. We'll have to do a whole entire podcast on that, right?
Yes, but I do have a question, real quick.
Yeah.
Just you can give me a one sentence answer, since I agree it could be a whole episode or even a whole season. But when we're choosing to suffer the slings and arrows and to get down into the muck as part of our daily life, how do we as spiritual beings choose not to carry that with us as we're making this transition astrologically?
Well, it's interesting when you're mentioning the astrology. So hang on to that question. We'll come back to that,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
Because I want to talk about the astrology thing before I lose that thread. So the thing about the astrology right now is there are times when you go back through human history and you can see certain patterns and you can see how things are evolving and happening. The interesting thing about astrological patterns, the process of Western astrology, is that there is hardcore scientific data. You're trying to convince my husband of this, of like when these particular energetic patterns exist in astrology, when this planet is moving through this sign or these planets interact in this way, these are the kinds of things that happen, the potential for these types of changes or these kinds of transformations or these shifts. And it's documented and it's repetitive. Now, no two periods in history are ever exactly the same. Each person's, the moment that someone's born is a unique imprint of all of the energies present in the cosmos at that time. That's how I practice astrology. But what is happening now is we have these four outer planets, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which are the four planets that represent our experience, the global experience of being humans together on the planet. All four of those planets are changing signs within a short period of time. That is extraordinarily rare, like tens of thousands of years back rare to have. I mean, Pluto, planets change signs. It's not unusual for these planets. Saturn takes about 3 years to change signs. Pluto takes longer. It can be in a sign for 15 to 20 years. So to have, with the cycles of that, to have all of these four outer planets, which represent various aspects of the human experience, changing signs within like less than a 2 year period, it's extraordinary. Various astrologers have said they've gone back, they've tried to find back previous times when there was this level of change. And then the overlay of some of the signs and energies really point to this passing away of the old world order, not just in one area, but across the board, globally, everywhere as a human experience. And we've all signed up to be here. So this is this extraordinary pattern, this extraordinary potential. And it's potential. Set there's no set parameter of like, it's all going to work out great. Pluto's an Aquarius. Everyone's talking about global community and unity, but there's shadow sides to that too, just as there were shadow sides to the last series. And part of what astrologers have studied is that when we look at these different cycles of humanity, there have been points where we've gotten caught up in certain shadow sides. For example, Pluto and Mars, which are connected to each other, which has to do with taking action, there's and power. There have been very much is where the imprint of war has gotten woven into this consciousness that we have, that this is the way that you hear people talk about it, even historians. It's just humans are by nature, war, but that's not true. That's a story that's being told about this. So we are constantly being given opportunities to shift into a different expression of this energy. And that's why and it's not happening because of the planets. The planets are representation, like a weatherman. You look at this and you say, well, here's the high pressure system, here's the low pressure system, the potential for this kind of weather to happen, it's here. But the H and the L on the weather map are not making it happen. Saturn is not making it happen. Neptune is not making it happen. They're representative. They're like divine messengers. It's like this code in the sky. So this is really extraordinary. It really is. I feel like oftentimes, oh, this is a pivotal moment in history, but this really is extraordinary. And I think to some extent, we, particularly from the spiritual community, feel a bit of a weight of like, oh my God, this is like a do or die. Like, we've really got to transform the world, or humanity is doomed. Maybe the human experiment is, maybe it will work out, but our souls are still intact and always will be. And we will all go back to the infinite oneness. But I think we really want to try to make it work, just, try to create that change and transformation. So you have all of this external stuff. Well, there's this as within, as above, so below, as within, so without. When the world is in so much chaos, you have to look within yourself and say, where is the chaos within me and where is the peace within me? I once got to see the Dalai Lama speak, and this young man asked him about the imprint of war, and he says, I'm here far away from my home, and there's war going on, and what can I do to end the conflict? And the Dalai Lama looked at him and he said, look within yourself. Where are you at war within yourself? And end the war within yourself. And he was like, "Oh my, and that really touched me hearing that." So when there's external conflict, where's the internal conflict coming from? And not getting caught up in that. And understanding that that allows us, you know, ultimately the only thing we have control over, the only thing we can change is ourselves. So that empowers us to change the internal reality, which is the way in which, over time, collectively, the external reality shifts.
I love that. And when we shine our light and when we do change ourselves, we offer an invitation to others to do the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I kind of want to shift for a moment because I'm so intrigued with unconscious belief. And I just came back from a month-long vacation to Portugal, and it was amazing to reconnect with my family lineage and to visit my grandfather's hometown and just to connect with my ancestors and my family in that really special way. And when I was sitting at a dinner table with my extended cousin, um, mother, and we had never met her. She is living and has born and raised on the Azore Islands in Portugal, and my mom has literally never met her. And their mannerisms were the same. Their behavior was so similar. Even the traumas and the anxieties that they had experienced seemed so similar. How is it possible that two people lifetimes apart could be so energetically connected?
So this speaks to something that I've become really fascinated with over recent years. My mother is Japanese, and was adopted, and in trying to trace her family genealogy and starting to make connections, and actually finding some of her birth family and making connections and communicating through a translator. We have to do it, but finding these interesting similarities. my husband is really into genealogy and finding all these extraordinary similarities. So there is the thing, there's this concept of like ancestral lineage, which I have come to understand is energetic lineage. This concept of when people come from like a nomadic background, sometimes centuries, even decades later, it can lead to members of the family. Gosh, we moved houses so many times and we were always like moving. And then they find out that their family was like, part of their family background was very nomadic. And it's just kind of, that was, and it's kind of an imprint. So this concept of ancestral energetic lineage is like our DNA. There are certain things that carry on in our DNA, and sometimes something's hidden down there, and then you have two people with a similar DNA combination, and suddenly the blue eyes are recessive. You need two parents with a blue eye gene in order for one of the children to have blue eyes, right? There there is it's like energetic DNA. These concepts of ancestral lineage that are carried forward. So it's in our DNA. It could be food preferences, right? And so this energetic lineage is being carried forward. And that's also a part of what is happening now. There are ancestral patterns where people have, certain ethnicities or certain religious groups or just, certain categories of people, healers or psychics or whatever, that have been oppressed or um, uh, rejected or targeted for centuries and centuries and centuries. And that can sometimes carry over to where now you have a young woman who's going into medicine who has this way ancestral background back to like maybe the Salem witch trials and even before that, and is like dealing with some of the biases against her as a young woman doctor. And there's that ancestral like healing that link to the oppression of her ancestors. And she may not even be conscious of it, right? So what's happening now is we're also many of us in this time have also signed on to be the ones who are going to break ancestral patterns. In my own life, in my own family, um, this pattern that has to do with the lack of food and a sense of it's not exactly connected to poverty, but it's like certain circumstances and of always having to make sure that you have enough. And I have, like, when I travel, my backpack has like, it's like I'm a squirrel. I have snacks, like I have an emergency kit, but it's like there are like food at the airport. It's expensive, but I will carry like whole bags of stuff, not like little snack packs. It's like I always have like I'm like a squirrel. I always have snacks and food. It's kind of just, God forbid I should be hungry. But I mean, that's just a funny little example. But there are ancestral patterns, ancestral lineage that we're here to break, whether it's lineages of abuse or oppression. Sometimes sometimes the thread of like health issues is connected in that. Issues of abandonment and betrayal, instances of people being falsely accused. There are certain aspects of it. It's not just like the racial and ethnic biases, it's sometimes personal ones. So another piece of the invitation here is the invitation to, oh yeah, this has been the case in my family for years. It's just, this always seems to happen. Everybody gets divorced, you know, or everybody, some sort of example, financial failure, business failures. There's an interesting coach that I work with, and one of the first things they'll ask when someone's dealing with this process, like, I make money, but then I'm constantly losing. Do you have a family history of people whose businesses have gone bankrupt? Yes. So the question is now, how do we shift that? How do we change that? And it's about becoming conscious of that. So when you see that you were able to observe, look at these patterns and how could, you know, I mean, they're connected family wise. I mean, and they have like a direct connection. How could two people growing up in very different cultures with no contact with each other have all of these similarities? So this is a way of us looking at ourselves and saying, when I see this pattern in myself, where else do I see this in my family? Where else do I see this? Sometimes in our chosen family. We talk a lot about, we have such an amazing chosen family. I love our group. It's so precious to me. And we're remarkable together. We do amazing things. And sometimes when we go to events together and someone talks about a trauma that we've never heard, I'm like, oh, wow. We see the connections and the similarities, not just because we're all human, because not everybody in the room experiences it. And I'll say to people, I had never heard that story before. That's amazing. And we talk about similar experiences. So even in friends, chosen families where we're pulled together, we see this energetic pattern. And I think it's amazing that when you have that support, you can recognize the pattern and understand where it comes from, and then realize maybe I can just set this down. I can just put this down. I can, you know, and and not like discarding it in a way, because when it's ancestral, there's also the sense of ancestral and honoring. So it's recognizing the sacrifices that have been made previous to us that have brought us to this place now, where we are in the place where we have the time and the energy and the space and the resources to be able to heal those patterns, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I really love to do when it comes to like breaking those cycles is to rewrite the narratives. So when there are these family stories that have been told over and over and over, or even in a friend group, if there are stories that or narratives that repeat themselves, I will just journal and rewrite it, and I'll reframe it from a positive, empowering place. I'll even make timelines where when there's that timeline of events that have led to really dramatic moments, I'll rewrite the timeline to see it from a lens of positivity and empowerment. I'll also use past life regression, even if it's just pulling up a YouTube and doing a guided past life regression there, or if you have the means, seeing a professional who can guide you through rewriting those moments. Also, purging physical clutter. So if I have these items or these artifacts that are surrounding me that carry an emotional weight that is not serving me, I will donate it or I will purge it so that energetically I'm making space for a more positive future. Is all of that on track? Is that enough? Do you have any other ideas?
Well, the thing is, basically, what you're doing is you're claiming for yourself the power that you have. Remember, I said earlier, the only thing we have control over, the only thing we can change is ourselves. We can change our immediate, yes, we can, all right, we can move, we can get rid of our physical clutter, but that's our clutter. If we live with someone who's, you had roommates, I've had roommates, I live with someone who it comes from a family of hoarders. And so, they have a tendency to accumulate a lot of things. I can't change that pattern in themselves. I can move their things away, but, I can't force them to clear out their dresser drawers, which have too many socks in them or whatever. I mean, I could dump it all out, but they would just fill it back up again. So we'll just leave that for them to deal with. But the only thing we have control over is ourselves. But the thing is, when we empower ourselves to make those changes, to break that pattern, to be aware of it, to honor where it came from, to honor the path that led there, to recognize the sacrifices, but to say we don't have to continue to experience this pattern or to experience change this way or to move forward in this way. And to say that by empowering ourselves to do this individually, well, by claiming what we call individual sovereignty, then every time each of us does that for ourselves, we create the energetic vibration of the potential for other people to be able to do that as well. So that is a way of empowering. And it also really does. I've listened to quite a few. There's a lot of people right now, because the concept of healing ancestral wounds is a very current topic. And I've listened to many people talk about this. True shamans who say, yes, when you heal this, it heals ancestors who passed before the wound was healed. In Not that they don't carry it into the spirit, but it frees them from the bond to that. And it does create healing from the past. This idea of they say you can't change the past, but you can change the story you tell about the past, right? So there was this time when we were nomadic and we never had a home. But then finally, though some of us, some of our descendants found home and claimed home for themselves, and therefore brought us all home. So it's that concept of by claiming it for yourself individually, then you're claiming it collectively. But I think that speaking to a broader question is, I thought about this when we were talking about clutter. How do you decide what to let go of and what to keep? When is it clutter, and when is it a valued piece? You know, the Marie Kondo thing of like, bring you joy. Our supervisor do all these best thoughts you have. They bring you joy. He goes, what are you talking about? They go, why are you keeping? I just don't have time to clean up my soccer. So, but it's this is this concept of being able to clear these two voices, because we have these two vibrations within us of discernment, and then there's judgment. Like when people say use good judgment, what they really mean is use your best discernment. Judge When we think of judgment, it's this like, oh well, you walk into the room and you go, God, I can't believe that pile of stuff is still sitting there. I should have cleaned it up. I should get rid of it. What is wrong with me? It's in my way. No wonder I'm unproductive. No wonder I'm like, 3 days behind on writing this next chapter in my book, and blah, 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 blah. We go down that whole line of judgment. Whereas discernment is like, I should just, if I can just move this over here, I don't have to sort through the piles. Just move this pile over here. Now it's out of my way. And now my desk space is clear and I can work productively. And I'll get onto that later. The difference between, so it's using discernment and judgment to decide what to let go of, what to, how long to sit with the feeling. We talked, about sitting with feelings, how long to sit with those feelings. So discernment is this voice that comes, well, let's start with judgment. Judgment is this voice that tends to be critical, it tends to have a negative narrative, it tends to be repetitive, it tends to leave us feeling shame, it tends to bring us into guilt or shame, or guilt, shame, or blame. Because, well, if I would move this stuff, but there's no place else for me to put it because everybody else's stuff all around and blaming, passing that around. So that is the voice of what we spiritual community refer to the ego. It's really just our wounded parts. It's the parts of ourselves that are like, I feel overwhelmed, or it's really not my fault, or, that sense of not being empowered. The voice of discernment always comes from the heart and speaks with a voice of love. Maybe it's time to get rid of this. It's like, every time you look at that pile, you feel really guilty, and you're going to if we just move this pile or sort through it or get rid of it or deal with this situation, you'll feel better. And not like, oh, why haven't you? But discernment guides us with the sense of love. It's like, you really don't need to be holding on to this anymore, or it's really time to let this go. It comes from that. So it comes from a very loving, it speaks to us with that voice of love. So, I will sometimes sit down with myself. I also journal like you do, and I will just write. And sometimes I do what's called a mind dump, as I learned this from my life coach, Carrie Richardson, who's amazing. We do a mind dump and you just write, and all the critical, nasty thoughts or whatever, it just all comes out, all comes out, all comes out. But then eventually another voice says, don't be so hard on yourself. And, it's okay. You've been going through a lot. And, yes, it's true, other people around you are really being very uncooperative. There's no doubting that, and eventually all of that stuff comes out, but you're not battling trying to feel it or not feel it. It's giving yourself time to reflect and to reflect on something, whether you journal or you just sit and listen. Some people draw. There are times when I will go into my studio. I actually like, there's like little cartoons. I have this little stick figure version of myself, and here she is in this like chaos and this confusion, and then I will draw her like walking out of the storm and into the light, standing on the cliff with the view of the sunset, and it just, the art, sometimes I just do it with color. I'm sure you can relate to that. It's color and lines and everything, and then it becomes more harmonious. So it's just expressing that energy and getting that out. But to really figure out, it is this coming from judgment or discernment, is how does it feel? Does it feel icky? Does it feel uncomfortable? Does it feel like blame, shame, guilt, blame, shame? Or does it feel like something encouraging? Does it feel like it's nudging you forward?
That's beautiful. So, for our audience, I have an invitation for you to, from a place of discernment, take a moment to really tune in and ask yourself what beliefs in your life feel heavy, restrictive, or like a should. And where do those beliefs come from? Are they from your family, your culture, a past version of yourself? And then ask yourself these questions. Are these beliefs still true for me? Do they feel aligned with the life that I want to create? And are they worthy of carrying with me into my next chapter? And just like we declutter our homes, we can declutter our minds and spirits too. And that's it, Deborah. We made it through our second episode of season 2. Our next episode is the power of completion, clearing space for what's next.
See you all in the next episode, everyone.